Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum friends. Welcome to Scholar's Hive. Lady Madeline was no more. Her brother wanted to save her dead body from her medical men for scientific research. He made a resolution to keep her dead body in vault or tunnel, the remote and exposed situation of the burial ground of the family. At his request, I personally aided him in the arrangements for the temporary entombment. The body was coffined. We two alone bore it to its rest. The vault was small and without means of light at the great depth. That portion of the building in which was my own sleeping apartment, it had been used in remote feudal times for the worst purposes of a dungeon keep. The mockery of a faint blush upon the bosom and the face. Having deposited a mournful burden within this region of horror, we partially turned aside, lit upon the coffin, and looked upon the face, Madeline's rosy cheeks, the disease which had entombed the lady in the maturity of youth, as usual in all maladies of a strictly cataleptical character, her smile upon the lip, which is so terrible in death. The narrator was disturbed. There was a conflict between his imaginary sound and real life experiences at Usher's house. He was moving slow in the room and thinking about the wild influences of Roderick's fantastic yet impressive superstitions. He saw a dream and could not sleep again. He felt restless due to strange feelings. There was something unnatural and inhuman. The narrator's dream caused hair-raising effect. Journey inward toward his inner spiritual self, which emerges in the form of Roderick Usher. It is a dream of the narrator who is leaving the temporal and material world. After some days of bitter grief, an observable change comes over the mental disorder of Roderick. His ordinary manner vanishes. He moves chamber to chamber. The narrator tries to calm down him, but his all efforts were fruitless. "And you have not seen it?" Roderick asked to the narrator. "An illuminating gas surrounds the house." Friends, here we can see two slides. One slide is showing a few days later during a stormy night. The narrator couldn't sleep. He was terrified. Roderick comes to the narrator's bedroom. Second slide shows us another picture, that is the narrator stays with them. He provides company to Roderick while he paints and plays guitar. He spends all his days inside, avoiding the sunlight. Story within a story. As he reads, he hears the noises. He ignores his imagination, but Roderick starts muttering to himself, "She is trying to escape from the coffin." The narrator attempts to calm Roderick by reading The Mad Tryst, a story about a knight who slays a dragon and wins a shield of shining brass. As the narrator reads the book, they can listen to the same sounds related in the story. Roderick declares Madeline was alive when they buried her. They had buried Madeline alive. Roderick confessed, "I dared not to speak. How pity we have put her living in the tomb. I heard her first feeble movements in the hollow coffin. I heard them many days ago, and now, tonight, the breaking door and the death cry, the rending of her coffin and the grating of the iron hinges of her prison and her struggles within the coppered archway of the walls. Oh, whither shall I fly? She not be here to upbraid my haste? Have I not heard her footstep on the stair? Do I not distinguish that heavy and horrible beating of her heart? Madman!" shrieked He was giving up his soul. Madman! I tell you that she now stands without the door. फ्रेंड्स, ये वो डायलॉग्स हैं जिसमें रॉड्रिक अशर कन्फेस करता है, यानी कबूल करता है, इतराफ़ करता है, इतराफ़े जुर्म करता है कि उसने मेडलीन को ज़िंदा दफ़न किया। ये सारी उसकी फीलिंग्स हैं जो वो हॉररेबल फील कर रहा है अबाउट हिज unspeakable sense to bury Madeline alive. There was blood upon her white robes, and the evidence of some bitter struggles upon every portion of her. With a low mourning cry, she fell heavily inward upon the person of her brother, and in her violent and now final death, agonies bore him to the floor, and a victim to the terrors he had anticipated. She is buried alive, then came back covered in blood. She collapsed her brother, and they died together. The narrator fled from that chamber and mansion. The storm was still abroad in all its wrath as I found myself crossing the old causeway. Wild light and blood-red moon from the roof of the building in a zigzag direction. Fissure rapidly widened, and the fall of the House of Usher burst at once upon my sight. The house begins to collapse. The narrator flees for his life. Roderick is dead. He and Madeline are consumed by the falling house. Conclusion. The book will be opened again. The narrator will go back over the causeway, and the reader will follow him through that maze of prepositional phrases, posed just as much by ending the story with an echo of the title, The Fragments of the House of Usher. Here we have critics' view. Critics are prompted to analyze the story as a description of the human psyche, for acts house to the unconscious, Sister Madeline to the subconscious, Usher to the conscious self. The House of Usher is like the universe, not only in that everything is related, but also in that it is limited. The splitting of house symbolizes the personality split, which can be called dissociative identity disorder. Themes of melancholy, possibility of incest, and vampirism shows mental disorder. The falling of house creates terror. Poe would write at length about the process of repeated collapse and rebirth and apply it to the workings of universe. Themes and motifs. Motifs mean an idea that is repeated elements in literary or artistic work. Sanity versus insanity, fantasy versus reality, incest, deterioration. Motifs, sound, illness, fear. Symbols, candle, which is inner light and darkness. The woods, prison. Web of spider symbolizes disappointment. Usher's name and painting symbolizes sorrows of life. Eyes stand for windows to the soul. House stands for isolation and as a living character, that is personification. Weather, dark and gloomy. The bridge over the lake. Note, the mansion is presented with a humanized. Its windows are described as eye-like windows. A tan encircling the mansion and reflecting its image. Madeline as the twin of Roderick, reflecting his image and personality. The desire of the ushers to isolate themselves from the outside world. The house is full of mysteries. The house created the image of coolness where nobody can live. The description of the house, Madeline thumping desperately in the coffin, the storm wall with hanging shield, clamor of falling shield, slow opening of the door, etc. The bridge over the town. The narrator as Roderick Usher's only link to the outside world. The name Usher. An usher is a doorkeeper. In this sense, Roderick Usher opens the door to a frightening world for the narrator. The storm, the turbulent emotions experienced by the characters, the collapsing mansion, fall of the Usher family. Snow symbolizes death. The real essence of the short story is in the effect of terror, horror, hair-raising experience. Entombing of Madeline is full of terror. Roderick's up and down temperament, his house is shaping his mind. A victim of isolation, very odd, artistic, reserved, and charitable family. Spiritual and physical roots are not strong. Living family and the house are one soul, a contrast between metaphysical fantasy and grim reality. Psychological dimension. The story depicts the struggle within the soul. Roderick Usher, his sister Madeline, and the house all shared one common soul, the fall of the House of Usher.